You might have seen the bombshell settlement, National Association of Realtors, in a national class action lawsuit and huge changes in the residential real estate industry, and it affects you as a seller or a buyer and how business will be conducted. There's also a lot of fear out there of what it's going to cost buyers or what it's going to cost sellers, and the headlines are doing an amazing job of making everybody think it's going to cost everybody, and clearly that cannot be the case. So my intention, I am going to be communicating to you, putting out more email than normal, more video than normal, and I'm going to distill down the truth of what's happening, what it really means if you're buying, what it really means if you're selling, coming from a completely unbiased perspective, but also sharing the strategy of how, whether you're buying or selling, it's simple. There's just simply new rules that if we understand them, then we can create great strategies around them, which really makes it just like any other market right before this happened, and it'll be the same after, though the strategies might shift a little bit. So the number one thing that changed in this settlement is that as a seller, you cannot any longer display the buyer agent's compensation in the MLS. And so if you're not aware of it, what happens in today's world, and by the way, these changes are not officially going into place until July. So in today's world, you go to the MLS as a buyer's agent and you see what the seller is offering as compensation should you bring a buyer to their home. So essentially it's an incentivized program that's public to realtors where, say I'm representing a buyer, I know that if I sell them home X or Y or Z, what each one of them will pay. And so naturally that creates an environment where all of the homes want to be competitive so that they're not left out of homes, of the group of homes that are going to be shown. Now, of course, realtors are not supposed to steer their clients based on buyer agent compensation, but of course, realtors are also human. Now, the best of the best, they play by the rules. But in a world in which it's so easy to get licensed and there's 26,000 agents just in San Diego County fighting for very few transactions, you can imagine that maybe they don't all play by those same rules. So what happens now is, as a seller, you can no longer display that compensation on the MLS. The agent now does not know what they'll be paid or even if they'll be paid for bringing a buyer to your property. So what this now new environment creates is a couple of different scenarios. One is that buyer agents will now have to, if they want to stay in business, they will have to enter buyer agency agreements with their clients where they've agreed to compensation potentially. Now, some of those will agree to percentages, some of those will agree to flat fees, and that's all yet to play out. But what also is true is that it will not just be the buyers that have to pay those commissions. And this is one of the fears that are being put out there by the headlines is, oh my gosh, buyers won't be able to purchase anymore because they'll have to bring so much more money to the closing. Well, the reality is what is allowed in the new rules is that the buyer can just simply bring a higher purchase price to the table and then ask for a seller concession back, not a commission, but a seller concession back. And seller concessions can be displayed publicly in the MLS. So in some senses, we're just taking the word commission and changing it to the word concessions. Now, what makes it even more interesting is that another change that's now in play is that a buyer cannot even see a property without being in a buyer agency relationship with an agent that is helping them access the home. What's really interesting about that is that it even applies to open houses. So we'll see how this all plays out. But just imagine an open house with 30, 40, 50 visitors. And some of those open houses will have very operationalized, very seamless ways of getting the paperwork done quickly, just like we were able to solve during the COVID days, where we also had some documents that had to be signed before accessing. So in many ways, we've already been here. But of course, there will be agents that don't have the systems, don't have the resources, and where it's very cumbersome to see that particular home. You can expect those homes will get less showings because it will simply be more inconvenient to buyers to see those properties. So you're starting to get the sense that in many ways it's business as usual, in that buyers can still make whatever offer they like. Agents can still communicate with one another and figure out what the compensation will be. It's just not communicated through the MLS. And it all can be negotiated in the contract. So if you're a seller, you still have the same goal. Get as many people to the property to compete with each other so that the price will rise as high as it possibly can. As a buyer, you have the same goal, which is how do I get access through my buyer representative to homes and to information that I may not have access to if I don't hire this particular agent. So what's going to happen, just to bring you into more of it, and again, I'm going to have a lot more messaging and a lot more clarity, and as so much of the detail gets flushed out, and even the DOJ right now is still looking at the final details of this. So I'm going to be communicating with you. But what is very likely is that if you look at the fabric of what I'm talking about, we can expect a contraction in the real estate industry in terms of the number of realtors, because it will take a more professionalized process. Just like in today's world, a seller chooses an agent to represent them for the sale of their home, and they enter an agency relationship. Now the exact same thing is going to happen on the buyer side, where buyers will enter into agency relationship with someone who represents them through the purchase. There's going to be those buyers, just like in today's world. Nothing changes. There's going to be those buyers who say, well, I'm just going straight to the listing agent. Well, that's true, but now they're also going to have to sign an agreement with every single one of them related to just that home. Think of it as a single home agreement. And that is cumbersome. So I think that it actually will encourage a lot more agency relationship on the buy side, but your agent will have to be able to articulate value and make sure you can access information, homes, listings that you would never know about or never even see should you not hire that person. Agents that can't articulate that, can't bring that to the table, where that value isn't real, are likely to simply exit the industry. They will be pushed out. This is the professionalization of the real estate space. So in many respects, we're excited about that because you deserve it, the public deserves it. And as a professional in the industry, I couldn't be more excited that we are in our level up moment. So as I end the video, I want to encourage you to a large extent, ignore the headlines. I'm seeing some of what's being put out there. Commissions are getting cut in half, buyers are going to lose, sellers are going to lose. Well, those all can't be real, right? So reading through these things and just realizing, wow, even the most esteemed news outlets out there in this country are to some extent tabloids. I'm going to be bringing you the facts and being clear on here's what is a fact, here's what's speculation, here's the strategies to solve those things, and you can count on me continuing to travel the country, gathering with the best of the best so that you have cutting edge strategy, tactics, and approach, whether you're buying or selling a home. And we don't have all the answers yet, but here, guess what? Neither do the reporters that are out there. So I will continue to email and send video on a more consistent basis than in the past. I typically like to be in front of you about once a week. You can expect to hear from me more often because it is genuinely a different world we're moving into between now and July. And I'm gonna make sure that you, as someone that's part of our world, our ecosystem, are very well informed so that you're able to win as a buyer, win as a seller, and you can drown out the noise and instead have proven tactical strategy that helps you win. I'm Dan Beer with Beer Home Team at eXp Realty, and I'll see you real soon.